Hi everyone, I'm William Frazetta. I'm the grandson of Frank and Ellie Frazetta and the son of Frank Jr. and Lori Frazetta. I've been working in the museum for 16 years now, since 2004 when I was 12 years old. My grandmother noticed that I was taking an interest in the artwork and my grandfather's career, so she decided it was a good time to bring me in here and teach me the ropes. So I started out originally as a greeter, so I just kind of sit at the front table and say hello to people, ask for donations, that sort of things. And eventually it turned into my grandmother teaching me the business side of stuff, just the history of the artwork, that sort of thing. And now here I am today as a manager and curator of the museum. I also do a lot of the PR, so if you see on Facebook, if you're in Frazetta groups, I'm generally the one talking to people. My mom, Lori, also does that too. We feel it's important now in the 21st century, 20 years into it, it's very important to keep an online presence. So that's what we've been working to do. Construction on the museum was completed in 2000. Again, grand opening was in 2001. You can see that in the documentary Painting with Fire. So originally the museum was a gallery in downtown East Stroudsburg on the third floor of a Masonic hall that my grandmother bought, I don't even know when, probably back in the 80s. And they had a small fire on one of the lower floors, and they realized that having very precious paintings on the third floor of a building wasn't the best idea. So thankfully the fire was put out pretty quickly and nothing was harmed, but it was enough of a wake-up call for them to be like, yeah, we gotta find something new. So they purchased a building in Florida and decided they'd try to have the gallery there. But they realized it's a little too hot for them, and my grandmother didn't like the paintings being so far away, so that didn't last very long, and eventually she built this place. So this is purpose-built as a museum. It was never a studio, it was never anything else. A lot of people do ask if this is where my grandfather painted, and it was not. He actually painted in his house. He had a room that we called the studio. It's really just a living room for him. He had his architect table that he'd paint on and his easel. But other than that, yeah, everything was done in the house. So it's cool though that this museum is on the estate. It was also convenient for my grandmother because she never drove, so it was nice for her to just be able to walk outside to work than to ask someone to chauffeur her each day, which anyone would have. It's just, she was very independent. She didn't like to have to rely on people. So yeah, it was just easy for her. And it had the nice extra effect of making the fans feel a little bit more of that aura of Frazetta when they came down the driveway. A lot of big trees, a lot of cool stuff like that. And to be right next to the house, people were just like, oh, I didn't even know it was right here. Like, that's where he lived. So even today we get people just kind of sitting outside first taking pictures because of how beautiful it is here. And just again, that atmosphere that you get before you even come in. You have this beautiful estate and the house right next door. So it's like all this stuff kind of going on in your head at the same time, and then you're here. So you can learn a lot from the property as well. There's a lot of spots where my grandfather drew inspiration from for his paintings. So again, it's very important that the museum is here, not just for us to have it more at home, but also for the fans to really experience the life of Frazetta as best as they can. So the museum was originally run by my grandmother. Again, she opened it, this one, in the year 2000 after it was built, and she ran it. Eventually I was brought in. My dad was brought in the 1990s, I want to say, more as marketing and technology side of things. So he was the one really working on the website back then, making other business deals with things that my grandparents weren't necessarily familiar with. They were very old-fashioned. For example, my grandfather, actually neither of them ever had a cell phone. The most they had was like a wireless phone in the house. We tried getting my grandfather an Xbox 360, he hated it and just went back to his old Super Nintendo. So they just didn't ever move forward. They didn't even have the internet. I remember my brother and I showed him the internet for the first time, and he was pretty mind blown. Anywho, getting off track. So he was brought in to do the deals that they weren't familiar with as far as technological standpoint. And then again, I was brought in at 12 as a greeter originally, to talk to fans and, kind of learn the ropes. But as of now we're 2020, for now, it is just my dad, Frank Jr., my mom, Lori Frazetta, and myself running the museum. There are no other Frazettas involved at all, which is fine. I have no issue with that. I just do some people get confused and they think that there's a conglomeration, and there's not. It's just the three of us. You might see my sister Noelle in here every once in a while, and my mom's sister Chris will be in here if it's really busy and we need extra hands. But yeah, I tend to run tours on Fridays, Thursdays, and then if my parents are busy doing other things on the weekends, like running conventions, I'll be here Saturday, Sunday. My parents tend to do Saturday, Sunday, but if it gets super busy, they'll pop in on a Thursday and Friday and help me out. It's one of those things where you never know how many people are going to come through the door that day. The only good determiner for me is whether or not there's a local convention, and then I'm like, yeah, we're going to need all hands on deck here, because we tend to get slammed, which is great. I love seeing tons of people come in here. But yeah, so long story short, it's primarily, as far as business-wise goes, it is Frank Jr., Lori Frazetta, and myself that run the place. So a lot of businesses today are defined by their mission statement. It's a pretty big thing nowadays. So I guess ours would be simply to preserve the legacy that Frank and Ellie Frazetta spent their entire lives building. This wasn't some overnight success. This was, a lot of work. I'm assuming a lot of you are artists, and you know that it's not easy. It's not a fun field. A lot of people like to take advantage of you, especially marketers. They love to control things. So for us, them spending their entire lives building this up, and this is what they wanted, it's important for us to keep this going. So our mission statement, again, is to preserve that legacy that they had. My grandmother had this saying, and I say it all the time. She said that art should never be for just the rich, which means that you shouldn't have to have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to enjoy Frazetta pieces of artwork. That's never how it was. Frazetta was always, I hate to use the term blue collar, but he really was the working man's artist. You didn't have to be an upper class family to see a Frazetta piece of artwork. You could have $5 from your allowance, if that, go to a drugstore, pick up a book that had a Frazetta cover on it, and boom, you have a Frazetta piece right there. So her philosophy of keeping things open for everyone is something that we really strive for. We could sell these paintings and I wouldn't have to work anymore. I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 years of my life in school, and subsequent ones I'm sure I'll be going back at some point. But that's not how we view things. And it's fine. A lot of people probably wouldn't feel the same way as us, and that's fine. But it's just how we are. And it's honestly thanks to fans like yourselves who support us and visit us that we're able to do things that way. So thank you for that. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. As far as recent sales of paintings, none of that's been us. None of it. Not the Egyptian Queen, not Escape of Venus, not At Their Its Core, Death Dealer 6. None of that was us. So a lot of people think that we're just selling art and doing this more for giggles, I guess, but that's not what we're doing. We sold 2 paintings to start with, just to buy the place back and to make sure funding was there. And it's not something we wanted to do, but it was something we had to do because we're a normal family. We inherited the artwork, but it doesn't mean that we lived off of it. My dad had his business. My mom worked in a doctor's office. So it's just one of those things where there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that people like to assume, but tends not to be correct. So yeah, we pride ourselves in not selling anything. Again, it would take 3 seconds. I could just make a phone call and I could get $1 million in my pocket, easy. But it's not something that we want. We've had people offer us millions for a single piece, and we decline it very hastily. It's just, You can't have a museum if there's no paintings in it. So that's how we run it. It's a, I don't want to say it's a sacrifice we made because it's not something we worked for, but it is something that we're giving up to make sure that I can still enjoy the work and so can fans who visit us. Frazetta was such a big icon for so many people. I've had grown men come in here bawling their eyes out because they finally get to see a piece in person. Same with grown women. I've had people come in here saying that my grandfather's artwork inspired them to get out of, whatever crummy situation they were in as kids, because they'd kind of go hide in their room and stare at my grandfather's books and the covers and escape to that world and think, okay, well, there could be something like that, as magical as that out there for me to keep going on. So there really is a lot to my grandfather's work that I feel preservation should really be held paramount over anything else. So we do have an online store. It's how we get a lot of funding to keep the place going. I mention it all the time whenever I post on Facebook, and I'm sure people might get sick of it, but the fact of the matter is the place can't survive on its own. This doesn't just grow money, it does take funding. So that store that we run at FrazettaArtMuseum.com, that's where we get, quite literally, other than the foot traffic in here, that's where we get the funding for the place. It's not like some big investors are chucking money at us, or it's not like we have these deep pockets, that we can just throw money in. We run this place more or less as a hobby and as a way to say thank you to the fans for allowing my grandparents to live out their dream. Is our way of giving back. But yeah, we couldn't do it on our own, so thank you for helping us out there. I know some people get a little weird about us merchandising stuff, as if art shouldn't be merchandised, but at the end of the day, again, this place doesn't just run itself. There's a lot of nuance that goes into the cost of a museum. We didn't even realize it when we bought the place, but it's quite a bit of money. You throw in taxes, and you throw in insurance, and you throw in the climate control and maintenance. There's truly a lot that goes on to this place. So the merchandise is something that we have to have. And it's something that I really look forward to as well. I'm not just the grandson, but I'm also a fan of Frazetta. I really do enjoy his artwork, so when we have new stuff coming in, I'll kind of sneak in the museum and maybe pull something out for myself. Like when we got miniatures in for Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, bringing these in. We got card sleeves for Magic the Gathering. I was like, okay, I'm grabbing a couple of these. Just because, again, I'm a fan as well, so I do get excited to see new stuff come in. That being said, since I am also a fan and the grandson, I do like to make sure that everything we sell is of high quality. So if we get something in from a vendor and it doesn't look good, I will talk to the vendor and say, hey, listen, can't sell these, we got up quality here, because at the end of the day, my grandmother always felt that quality was something that would really speak for a business, whereas if your stuff wasn't quality, it showed that you really didn't care all that much. And it's better off to go quality over quantity, just because then you'll get more people viewing the business as a positive thing. You don't want to spend money and get something back that you're not thrilled with. So even if it takes more time to get out or costs more to manufacture, I'm more than happy with doing that, just to make sure that fans and people who help us out are getting the quality that they deserve. So quality is very important to us here. And I do like to, it's cliche, I know, and I say it a million times, but it's so true. We really can't run this place without fans like yourself. It's because of you guys that we can run the place, honestly. Like I said, we all have our own jobs, we all have our own things going, we all have our own families. This isn't something that was just plopped into our lap and is just funded out of nowhere. It is because of you fans who help us out by word of mouth, by visiting us, by purchasing our stuff. So again, us going for quality and making sure you guys are happy when you purchase with us is our way of saying thank you for trusting us and keeping this legacy alive that my grandparents spent their entire lives working on building. So thank you. So plans for the future for the museum. It's pretty varied, and realistically, it all depends on funding. I know something Frank Jr.'s been wanting to do for a very long time is to start up an art school for children. You realize that art schools, they like to teach you what to do, not how to do it. So oftentimes you're going through just being given assignments and hoping you can do the best that you can the way that they think is correct. And honestly, for me, in like middle school, high school, when we had art projects, sometimes I wouldn't even hand them in because I didn't like what it was. I wanted an art teacher to come to me and say, hey, listen, we're just going to teach you how to paint, or we're going to teach you how to draw. And then I want you guys to just freestyle and come up with what you want and, have it graded off of the effort that you made. I would have loved that. But it's almost like art's become this, you have to do it my way or it's not right. And that's not what art is. Art is an expression of your creativity and your emotion. It's not about who says what should be correct. So what we wanted to do was create a museum or an art school for children where we would teach the foundation and the basics. And then, hey, if you want to go into classical art, go for it. If you want to go into fantasy, go for it. You want to do fine art, go for it. But that wasn't our concern. It would be based on teaching proper technique and, how to express yourself as best you could. Now, plans that I'd like to see along with that, but something I came up with that I'd like to have done, I wanted to turn this into the Frazetta Art Museum of Fantasy and Sci-Fi. So it wouldn't just be Frazetta paintings, it would be Frazetta paintings, it would be Krenkel, it would be Pyle, Jones, Viejo, all those guys. I wanted to see their stuff hanging up in here. There is no place you can go in the world where it's a strict fantasy, sci-fi, horror genre museum. There just isn't, as far as I know at least. But you can go to somewhere like the MoMA and see modern art. So I'd like to eventually turn this into a mecca, more or less, for fantasy guys. But things are kind of bittersweet seeing the auctions go so high for Frazetta works. Bittersweet because I like to see my grandfather's work and other artists in the genre being valued finally. But the bitter part of that is that I can't afford it. It's starting to get way past my price point, if I ever even had a price point to begin with. But yeah, so it's one of those things where maybe one day we'll get some benefactor just slapping a Jones piece in my hands and saying, hey, oh, hang it up. Great, love it. But it's not something I'm counting on. Currently we have Frazettas, obviously, and then one Krenkel piece hanging underneath the family portrait wall. And we also have a couple of Remington statues that my grandmother had purchased, God knows when. But other than that, yeah, currently it's just Frazetta. Hey, if you got a Jones piece and feel like donating it, or Viejo, give us a call. I'll take good care of it. Make sure it's hanging up in here. But yeah, so that's a plan I'd like to eventually have happen. It's just one of those long shots. And another thing we'd like to do, which is more realistic and something that we may or may not be currently working on, we'd like to start displaying up-and-coming artists' work. Because we feel that, again, we need to give back to the people who built my grandfather up. So kids who were buying his books or album covers or whatever back in the day, this would be a good opportunity for them to get their work shown in a museum and getting that recognition. So it's something, again, it's going to take work, but it's something I really would like to do. It's just learning the specifics of it and the legal, which there's always legal to it. But it's something I feel would be important to... It's important to have people whose names might not be as well known get that recognition. Because you could have, if someone didn't give my grandfather a chance, where would he be? He might not have become what he did. So we'd like to give some artists that chance that my grandfather had. Thanks for joining us on our first YouTube adventure, so to speak. It's realistically been a long time coming, and we're making lemons out of lemonade with the quarantine by giving us a little bit more time to actually get this started up. So yeah, also that's not a real painting in the background, that's a replication, so we keep all the originals in the museum just so everybody can see them. But anywho, I just want to say that we're so very grateful for all of you who have helped us out in general, but especially these last few months with the quarantine. Things were starting to look a little sketchy because without foot traffic, which is a large chunk of our funding, we weren't sure what we were going to do. I mean, the money we make at the museum goes back into the museum. So we don't have money coming in, there's nothing going in the museum. So, yeah, you've all rallied together, and it's been a small miracle that you've been able to keep us open. So, it's really thanks to you guys who have helped us out by purchasing our stuff and donating. So, we really, really appreciate that. I hope you all stay safe, and continue to look for new videos. I'm hoping to increase the production value of our videos. It's, again, a new thing for me. So as time goes on, I'm expecting things to look a little bit better, and all that fancy YouTube stuff. So, thanks again. Take care.